Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Second Society podcast. Today I had the actual pleasure of speaking with Jared and Elijah from the Films We Make podcast, and they had me on to speak about Second Society and also how valuable it is having a great second shooter with you on the wedding day. So without further ado, check out this week's podcast.
Today's episode, we're going to dive into the topic of finding second shooters, the struggles and challenges that we have experienced in this area, along with what we value most in second shooters. And we're also going to hear from Jimmy with Second Society about his experience and what led him to create this awesome new startup venture called Second Society and what all that entails. Tell us a little bit more about you and what is Second Society?
Yeah, for sure. So I am out in California in Carlsbad, and I've been filming weddings for over 8 years now. I have my own business called Aurora Film Co. And we started Second Society probably like 15 months ago was when it first kind of came up. We were filming weddings during the pandemic, and I think most people kind of went through this same kind of thing. But we had a booking in Tahoe, and then we had somebody postpone a wedding back in COVID to the same date, and they were in San Jose. So we had two bookings, completely different across California. And they were both like really big weddings. We both wanted to be at both of them, but just couldn't make it happen. And so I really needed to find not just a second shooter, but I needed to find a lead, a second, and an assistant to cover the wedding because there was like 400 people there. So I was put in this crazy situation, and it was in October, and everybody else was booked. And so, I did what I kind of do all the time, which is the Facebook groups and the California wedding videographers. And then our Instagram, reaching out to personal people that anybody in your network. And it was just one of those dates where kind of everybody was booked out. Not only that, but just finding like really good quality videographers is really tough. So you go into those Facebook groups and, you'll have 30 to 50 people reach out with their websites, and they're just like kind of dropping them in there. And then you're left with homework, and you got to do all the digging yourself, look at their profile, look, how they act, try to get a feel on each person. Cause it's not just like you're hiring somebody who's talented, but you're hiring somebody who, knows how to interact with the bride, can like represent your brand really well.
Yeah. I think everyone who's gotten to a certain point in their business that probably isn't the one throwing their name out there in these massive, like 30 person list has had this problem. And like, for instance, I actually did this the other day. I have a wedding in Miami like soon that I threw one out on the Facebook group, and someone responded, "I'm busy that day." And I'm like, okay, why'd you even say anything?
Please don't talk then.
I'm like, there's like 12, there's like 13,000 people in this group, right? And just like, oh, by the way,
what am I gonna do now?
I'm booked. And I'm like, I'm like, did you think this was a 2-person thread? Like me, you, and like one other guy, like you got to respond to? It's like, I sent it to you guys, and one of you guys is like, hey, I'm booked. And he's like, I would love to, but I'm booked. Oh, shoot. Anyways, I looked at my wife. I'm like, why did this guy respond? Anyways, then I got the same thing DM'd like 30 different people's, stuff. And they're like, hey, I'm in wherever, but you don't have to pay for my travel. I'll fly out. And I'm like looking at their stuff like, no wonder.
Yeah. So that's like, that's why we're doing this. And I think like it's still a work in progress. You know what I mean? Like we're always going to be refining the app. And the more people I talk like you guys, the more we want hands in on it and like, addressing all the issues that we come across. Cause we've only, come across so many issues in our business, and that's what we're kind of basing this whole app off of. But we want to refine it and make it like the best place to find quality shooters who you can like really trust and really see, what their work is like, who they're like within seconds. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And so, and there's just a lot of factors that you can rule out, that aren't being ruled out right now. So that's, number one, their work, like their profile, easy to see real quick, their availability dates. Like if we all put our calendar kind of out there and say like what blockout dates you aren't available to film weddings, that way I know right away, like I don't have to ask you, I don't have to text you at all. We're just all on there. So that's kind of the dream, and that's kind of the vision that we have for second society is just kind of eliminating all those questions that we ask up front every single wedding. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to second shooters, it is such a struggle, like you said with your story and Elijah and your story. It's like, finding someone that's like an extension of your brand is so challenging, especially in just like the vast sea of wedding creators out there. There's so many people now. It's like you have to vet so many people. So it's like having a platform where you can actually see quality videographers and people who, value the artistry of weddings and is going to service your clients well and, give you a good end result. And so, I guess the next question would be, why do you think videographers need a second shooter?
Well, first of all, I'll say some people, solo shoot all the time. And they're able to do that, and they've set up their business that way. And they do certain things that make it work. For me, what I've found, like I've gotten married. I want people to cover, as much as they can on a wedding day. You have 8 hours. It goes by super fast. And there's a lot of different amazing moments that are happening all the time. And so it's just math. Like if you're not in two places at once, then you're missing something. You know what I mean? And it just, for me on my wedding day, I was like, I don't want to miss those two things that are happening between the bride and the groom side, and the family that's kind of hanging out, family that's coming into town that I haven't seen for, 6 years. I want to see them in the film. You know what I mean? And so obviously the more people, the better. And so a second shooter, a good quality second shooter is really important to me. And I found that they capture moments that I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would have never been there had you not been there. You know what I mean? And just on a wedding day, it just goes by so fast for the videographer too. We're just like running around. We have a lot to set up. And so when you're setting up something, you're not filming. And so it's really important to kind of have somebody filming at all times, kind of capturing the essence of the whole day.
And there's a lot of different factors at play when it comes to if you can solo shoot versus when you need a second shooter. I think, you kind of have to analyze the wedding itself, what all is going on, what all does the couple need, what do you have to do in order to really tell this story in a way that's going to be really powerful and really true to who the couple is. And so there's just a lot of factors that you have to kind of figure out. And with those pain points though, too, it's like for people who are just coming in or like new videographers, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. It's like what's second nature to us. They have no clue, right? So like we kind of have like that outside in perspective where we're like, what are you doing? Like, this is not what you need to be doing. But then we need to have a little bit more grace, a little bit more compassion, because it's like, okay, I get it. Like they're just totally inexperienced. Like you said though, a lot of second shooters, if you're just starting out and you're like wanting to second shoot, I think the best practice is, even just to have a monopod, just get a static shot. Don't even add movement. Like as long as you're just like capturing that secondary angle, I think that's going to be sufficient enough for, the person you're working with.
It's a good point for people listening right now who want a second shoot.
Yeah.
And what I found too is like a really good thing is, do the basic stuff first. Which is like be still, make sure the exposure is locked in. And, if I get that back, then I can go back to them and say, hey, on the next wedding, like feel free to like try some new stuff. You know what I mean? Change up the lens, do something creative, have fun, because I know I can trust you already that you're gonna get the stuff that I need you to get, and then you can kind of graduate and move up from there.
So how was it working with your wife when you first started? And like, I'm assuming that you taught her, but I don't know.
No, she taught me.
Really? Okay.
Oh, wow.
No, like I was doing my thing, and I actually needed a second shooter, which is so funny because like I didn't realize we were creating this site, and to think back that like the first problem that I have was a second shooter, and I needed a second shooter because I was using Friends, and they forgot to hit record during the ceremony.
Oh yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing.
How does that work? Because doesn't the camera turn off? Like I've had that happen before, but then the camera turns off because it's like you haven't been recording. So I guess I'm just gonna go to sleep.
I think what was happening was like I was in charge of shooting like around, kind of moving around, and I said just look at both cameras, and it was like only a 10-minute to 15-minute ceremony.
Quick ceremony, yeah.
and he forgot to walk around to the other camera to check it.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him standing there. I'm like, hey, dude, go check.
Right. We're doing all these movements. Like,
yeah, man. You know how it is. And so, I found her work, and her work was like really similar to mine. Colors were like really similar, style of editing. And she was in Riverside at the time. And so, I just reached out and said like, hey, are you able to like help me film on some of these weddings? And she was like, yeah. But like when we got together, we started filming like weddings like every month or every 2 months or so. But like I noticed that her shots and her creativity, like she would get stuff that I never even thought, you know what I mean? Which was like awesome. And so, that really helped out. It's cool. And I think that's what's also awesome about what Second Society, can be is, everybody has a different eye and we're all made differently. And so like kind of pulling on that creativity and not being scared of it is also like an incredible blessing too. So like when if we can knock out all the things that scare us about trying to find a second shooter and look at all the positive, and see something that they can bring to your brand, something that they can bring to your couple. Like that's why I'm such a big component of having a second shooter on there, because more eyes you can get, the better that it could be. So,
yeah. So I want to go back to that question then that I was going to ask before we, figured out like how we found our second shooters. So what is your guys' process now that you've come to for Second Society of vetting people so that like we know when we go on there that the person that is like we've found and filtered through, you guys have vetted?
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about that. So right now, you have to pay to be on Second Society rather than a free place like Facebook.
Right.
I really want to try to weed out as many like first time shooters that there are. I want people to believe in the platform. And then also there's just a couple different ways we're going to be able to like vet people. One is when you sign up, you can look up all the people that you've worked with and kind of add them to your profile. And so if they confirm on their end that they have indeed worked with you, their logo and name sit on your profile.
Nice.
And so shooters like you guys can go on there, look at my profile and say, oh, he's worked with, all these 6 different videographers. I know some of them. Number one, you can reach out yourselves to them and be like, hey, how was that second shooter?
Right.
And so there's no like weird, like conversation that has to go on. You can be like, hey, honestly, how was he? I see his reviews, but what was it like working with him? And so that kind of just helps a lot. And then you can kind of build up that portfolio. The list will go on, and you can kind of just scroll through and see all the people that you've worked with.
That's awesome.
So that's kind of the major thing. Yeah. And then we're going into a beta version soon on Saturday. We're going to launch the site for real. That'll be beta. And my hopes within beta is to create like a code of conduct when people sign up that kind of go through all the lists of like what we all need in a second shooter. And that goes from like professionalism, making sure your shot is steady, well exposed, like you filmed 4 to 5 weddings already outside of this platform. Like we don't want any new people on here. And so just kind of eliminating all of that first burden of trying to like look through people and see if they've actually shot a wedding before. I kind of want to eliminate that before they even get on the site.
So what does someone have to do to get vetted? Like if someone's say they're newish, right? But they're like, I would love to second shoot with better people. What do they have to do to be able to clear your process?
It's not necessarily a clearing process. It's just like they can't ask for anybody to say that they've worked with them if they haven't.
Got it.
So you'll just know by looking at their profile. If they have nobody on there, they probably haven't shot with anybody in the past. And so if those companies aren't on the profile, you can like email them and give them an invite to like sign up as well.
Right. So I know that you have some questions, Jared. I have a quick little thing here that would be helpful for someone who we were talking on another podcast a couple podcasts ago about trying to build up your portfolio and also learn how to shoot well without shooting like Jared did 42 weddings in a year. So when you're starting, like I think it's great to go out and shoot as much as you can. if you have, you know, the time, the resources, you're not married, you don't have any kids or anything, like all that stuff works out. And you're like, okay, I just want to spend all my time shooting and trying to figure out how to get better. I don't think it's prudent to go out and shoot 42 weddings. So you want to probably shoot with people who know what they're doing. You're going to get way better quickly by watching them work. But what would you give, like, what's your advice to someone who's new and they want to shoot weddings, but they want to be able to shoot with someone good and get that person to trust them to be able to get their shot? So what would you tell someone new? What is the advice you'd give them to be able to get to that point where someone can trust them to shoot with them?
My advice would be to make your hourly rate lower, or even do it for free, and say like, hey, what can I bring that is professional? What can I bring that is of a value to this shooter, without them feeling like they have to take a huge risk? And so for me, it was like, you know, setting up tripods for somebody, and just making sure the cameras were set, and then they come and check the screen and make sure everything's framed right, you know, or plug in the audio, or just carry the bags. And so you kind of work as an assistant, you shoot as well, but you're shooting for free. So whatever you get doesn't really matter. Maybe you're just a third shooter at like a couple of weddings. So they can like really see your work, and then they can bring it back and say, okay, you did well doing this, A, B, and C. Maybe work on this the next time. So it's like kind of like little stepping stools, rather than just jumping in and saying, oh, I need, you know, an $800 second shooter, and I'm hiring somebody that I don't trust. Nobody should have to go that route. Yeah, you should. I think it's always helpful for me. And like, I think that's something I'm going to do this next year, is really try to bring on a third person who's kind of more in the background, that gets to be on set, you know, and help with all the tripods, setting up stuff, and then capturing moments that like not necessarily are as important than what we're doing as a first and second shooter.
Yeah, those are all really good things. I mean, that pretty much answered really one of my questions. And I mean, it's like, you know, what do we look for in second shooters? What do we, you know, the characteristics that we're looking for is, you know, the biggest one I think is trust. And I think that's kind of what Second Society is doing. It's building that trust so that you don't have to second guess. You don't have to feel that pit in your stomach like, oh, I'm hiring someone that's not a good fit, but I'm doing it just because I have to, or he was the only person available, or they were the only person available. And so I think by eliminating that and, you know, finding someone that you do trust is just game changing, honestly.
Why don't we tell people, so if you are, you know, like interested in this, and as they roll this out and start doing stuff, Jimmy, how do you get signed up to actually, for both ends, looking for a second shooter and, you know, jumping on the platform? You know, how does that actually work?
You can go to secondsociety.io and sign up there. There's a shooter profile only membership, and then there's all access, and then there's all access lifetime. So there's 3 different tiers that you can kind of choose from to gain access into the platform. Yeah, that's pretty much all the info you need to know to sign up.
And if you guys want 10% off, Jimmy has been very gracious to offer a coupon code at checkout if you're listening to this podcast. So use the code TFWM10, and that'll give you 10% off. So thank you, Jimmy, for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Jimmy, I do have one more quick question. So what, we could use this or not, but what has been the process like of creating this website? Has been hard? Like, what are some of the hurdles you've had to go through to be able to get this going?
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Really?
Yeah. I say that with a smile on my face, because yeah, it's been crazy. So if you don't know, like we sold our home. We used to have an Airbnb, and we sold that and took all the money, all of it, and invested it into this platform for coding. So yeah, it's been draining as far as the resource goes, but I think it's going to help a lot of people. And so we really believe I believe it's going to change the industry, the way that we find second shooters, and it should be the only way that we find them. At least high quality ones. I think there'll still be Facebook groups out there, but it doesn't work for, you know, people that have been in the business for, you know, so long and that want to grow their business in a healthy way.
Well, I mean, thank you so much for coming on. I definitely think this is an amazing idea, and for us, I hope this podcast is going to help spread the word about this, because I don't know. I'm sure you did the research. I did not, but I know of nothing like this, and I think this is gonna do really well in the future. So I wish you the best, and I hope our audience, as we grow, will continue to come back here, and we'll keep spreading the word as we continue this podcast and other podcasts as well.
I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, and just for this concept, I think it's just like it's so needed. It's something that it's one of those ideas where you kind of kick yourself. You're like, why didn't I think of that? That's brilliant. That's genius. So
the real reason is me and Jared had already started coding our own version.
Yeah.
We just wanted to just pick everything up.
What problems did you have coding? Yeah.
Who's your coding guy, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I salute you with coding, because that is beyond me, and I know that is probably just hair pulling stuff. Honestly,
Jared didn't have a MySpace, so he doesn't know how to code.
Yeah,
I don't. I had a MySpace. I just don't. I never got into code. So, all right, Jimmy. Well, thank you so much again for just being on the podcast and sharing your value that you're creating with Second Society. I think it is something that is just so refreshing, and just something that's going to help elevate the wedding industry and help photographers and videographers. So if you guys haven't heard of Second Society, Jimmy, one last thing, just tell people where they can find you. Where's the best place people can find Second Society?
Yeah, so my business is Roar Film Co. You can go to roarfilm.co to check out our weddings, and then Second Society is on secondsociety.io is the main website.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoy it, and we will see you next time.